And now to talk about our module of the week, let's turn it over to Martin Anderson-Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules and recipes of his own. Before we get to the module of the week, Martin, just really quickly, how has it been converting a lot of your modules to recipes? Because I'm actually about to start setting up some of my own.
So I'll say that I actually got some help initially from Jim Birch and one of his colleagues at Canopy. So they actually did some of the heavy lifting in terms of getting the Smart Date Starter Kit and the Smart Date Calendar Kit converted to recipes. And so I was able to kind of look back at the work that they had done and use that as reference. But now that I've done a few others, in general, it doesn't seem to require a lot. I think the trickiest bits have been that I've had some modules that provided some initial configuration and then also had a little bit of functional code. And so sort of figuring out how to sort of split that off into a separate project, or maybe, is it worth preserving as a separate project? Some of those have probably been the more complicated parts than actually just sort of creating the recipe itself.
That's one of the design intentional limitations around recipes, right? That you can't have executable code as part of the recipe.
Yeah,
exactly.
As Adam or Finder Proxima I've seen saying multiple times in Starshot, recipes are applied, they're not installed. And that goes directly to your point, Andrew. No executable code, it's just config. All right, Martin, what do you have for us this week for Module of the Week?
Thanks, Nick. Have you ever wanted a local DDEV environment optimized for working on a Drupal Contrib project? There's a DDEV add-on for that. It's called DDEV Drupal Contrib, and it was created in April of 2023 by Moshe Weitzman, a Drupal core maintainer, and according to his resume, the first American to contribute to Drupal. It has a 1.0.0 RC8 version available. It is actively maintained. It does have test coverage, as well as a lengthy README for documentation. The GitHub project currently has 2 open issues, one of which is a bug. Now, the add-on adds 2 DDEV commands to help during setup. There's a DDEV poser command, which creates a temporary composer contrib.json, adding Drupal/core recommended as a dev dependency. It also runs composer install and yarn install so that all dependencies are available. The additional DDEV symlink project command adds symlinks from your project files to an expected path within the custom modules directory of the installed version of Drupal. Once it's set up, you can easily run tests locally exactly the way they will be run in GitLab CI. And it's even easier to apply any of the automatic fixes that are available, for example, by running DDEV PHP CBF or DDEV ESLint with the fix tag. You can also commit the generated DDEV directory inside your project to make it easy for other contributors to use the same tools. I will note that after running DDEV Poser, I got errors trying to use Composer to add any other projects to the local environment, for example, to use admin toolbar for manual testing. That said, this is another great example of how the set of Drupal developer tools is always improving, and it also illustrates the power of DDEV's add-on system. So with that, let's talk about DDEV Drupal Contrib.
Okay, I got a hypothetical because I think this will solve my problem, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So last week, I was working on Project Browser, and I was like, oh, I don't have Yarn installed on my laptop, so let me spin up a DDEV container and download the project code just so I can run Yarn. And then I had to go, I did my thing, and then I was like, oh, now I have to test it. And I was like, oh, let me spin up another DDEV container to go build Drupal and add the project code and do. So you're telling me I could just use this and it would do all of those things for me and kind of keep that project code in its own Git repo and not kind of mess it up.
I would say that's the idea. Is it's really meant to be sort of an environment specifically for working on a Contrib project that has sort of all of those tools available. And I think also the fact that is sort of built to mirror how the GitLab CI is going to run a lot of those tests. Also makes it easier to be able to fix those locally where they're sort of fast to run and easy to apply the fixes, as opposed to sort of, creating a merge request, making some changes, pushing it up, waiting for the CI job to run, seeing that feedback, and then sort of, that's a much slower sort of iteration than being able to do those locally.
Yeah, there's also a couple of other problems I think that this solves. I'm gonna have to check this out, by the way. But when you're working on a module or an issue, you're cloning a specific issue fork. But when you require a project, it's requiring a particular tag. So, but when you're running tests, you generally need Drupal core to be there because most tests in Contrib build on top of the Drupal testing suite. So what can happen is if you have your module inside of core and then you accidentally run like composer installer or something, it is liable to like blow away all your work because it's going to be like, oh, these things have changed. It's just going to install the tag again. So there's been actually a few other tools that have built up around this that kind of solve a similar problem. Because I was actually asking Matt Glauman when he was on as guest host a couple of months back how he solved this, because I was running into issues trying to figure out the best way to test some modules I was working on. And what he does is he just has a separate Drupal install for all the modules he's working on. And he just clones them in. But I've found Joachim's Drupal project Contrib development composer plugin has a convenient command for switching between the composer version of a project and the GitLab version of a project. But it has the same risk as if you run. Well, it does like symlinking and stuff, so things can get a little funky in DDEV, and you can still wipe things out. But I'll have to try this out because I haven't found like the perfect recipe yet. And it's funny because it's not until you start editing several modules and modules that you don't necessarily maintain that this becomes an issue. But once you start editing quite a few modules and or fixing bugs in quite a few modules, it becomes a real hassle to switch between projects.
So Nick, when you say recipe, you mean combination of things to make things work, right?
Yeah, not a Drupal recipe.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify there.
Yeah, no, I meant it more colloquially. But yeah, I'll have to try this out because it's definitely a problem I've run into this year. That it'd be nice if there'd be a solution for that.
And again, go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, to me, the great thing here is Moshe creating and maintaining this thing. So, DDEV, there was a time when DDEV was just a web server and a DB server. And yeah, I knew how those, would work with different CMSs and stuff. But as people make all these different things and different approaches to using the things, the fact that we can have maintainers from the specific places with the specific expertise. So Moshe really knows how to do this. And he maintains a couple of these. And that's true of the Solar add-on, and all of the add-ons have, or most of them have maintainers who have specific expertise. And so that is such a win because there's just no way that I can understand all the different add-ons or all the different problem spaces of the people that use DDEV. So it is a wonderful thing. It is a wonderful thing to count on Moshe's work on this one. Moshe and community. The community's been, very, very active in there.
Randy, I have a question because this is not a Drupal module of which I know how to install. It's a DDEV add-on, right? So I'm wondering, when you're using an add-on in DDEV, can you install it globally, or is it per project that you would have to install this?
It's per project. They're all built around per project. So definitely per project.
Cool.
And maybe just to clarify there, John, the way you would use this with a project is actually by initially cloning the Drupal module or whatever project, and then installing that into there, and then it actually sort of builds a Drupal site within that project folder.
Yeah. So I'm reading the install steps on the GitHub page, which are very clear. I was just more, I was more questioning in general with add-ons, like how add-ons work.
Yeah.
But per
I have to
project makes sense. Go ahead.
I have to say, I think that that's a huge advantage over the other approach, by the way, because, and this, with the other approach, like at this point, I have, I don't know, 8 or 10 module ecosystems installed on that Drupal site. I've got ECA, I've got commerce, I've got all sorts of stuff. And as you add additional dependencies, sometimes things go a little, can get a little wacky. And, when you're getting ready to do a major version upgrade, which is a lot of the work that's happening right now, you can get Composer in a weird state where it can't upgrade either. Now, that's going to be an issue with the DDEV add-on as well. Like Composer will detect that there's an incompatibility, but it's more of an issue if you have a bunch of different projects in one site, so to speak, rather than multiple. I'm gonna have to try this out. It looks like it'll actually solve a problem that I've been having the last few weeks.
Yeah, I tried it out with the event platform, which has a ton of dependencies. So to be able to just clone the project down and then have it, pull in all of those dependencies and drop those in for me was actually quite a significant time saver. So definitely a fan of this one.
I feel like this is also not the first time someone's tackled this problem. I can't find it right now, but I did find like there's another similar project that was just created 7 months ago, and it's not a fork of this one. I remember using one from before this existed, that I forget why I didn't stick with it. But like, what I think is neat about the way the DDEV add-on system works is that there's not necessarily, like, it doesn't force there to be one solution to everything. It's really easy to just start creating an add-on and see where you get. And if you have a new idea on how to approach something, then you just follow the add-on template and you've got something up and running and working. And it's, really great to get quick feedback from others in the DDEV community, like, hey, is this actually a good idea, or should I just go and archive this repository now before it causes more damage?
Before anybody notices.
Right.
And Andrew maintains a few, right? So
yeah, I maintain one that adds playwright support to DDEV for running automated tests, and that one isn't Drupal specific at all. It's just getting playwright in place within the web container. And then there is one which is Drupal specific, which kind of does something similar to what we do with Drupal core, where you get a fresh site install for each test that you run. You can run them in parallel. You can run them with Chrome, Firefox, WebKit, and get your tests going. And that one is, very much tied to Drupal, because it handles doing like the site install and running Drush and getting things going. But I can't think of a time I've had to go to Randy and say, hey, DDEV can't do this. I need something changed in DDEV to support this complicated workflow, which is pretty neat.
that actually is where add-ons came from, because people would always ask for, oh, I need this, and oh, I need that. And if you put in everybody's, oh, I need, then it's just never, can't ever work. But people can get the add-ons that they need, and the world is it's a better place. And each of the add-ons has an issue queue and its own README and its own tests. And for add-ons to be promoted to official add-ons, which means they're in the DDEV namespace, they have to have test coverage. So that's it really is just that the having multiple maintainers and separate issue queues is just the best thing in the world.
Well, thank you, Martin. As always, a really on topic non-module of the week. How can folks connect with you or suggest a module of the week for the future?
We are always happy to get nominations for module of the week in the Talking Drupal channel of Drupal Slack, or they can reach out to me directly as ManClue in all of the Drupal and social platforms.
All right. See you next week.